I was surprised to say the least when I heard that the Valkyrie Drive PS Vita game got the green light to be released in the West. When thinking of Valkyrie Drive, my mind automatically goes to the anime that was borderline hentai, showing overextended lesbian fondling, kissing, and borderline rape scenes just for the sake of being sexual. Yet, the game is here and it's entirely not what I was expecting it to be. So, let's get on to the review. Here is my review of PS Vita exclusive Valkyrie Drive Bhikkhuni. The story of Valkyrie Drive revolves around a world where there is a strange virus affecting women in their teens and 20s that slowly spreads and kills them, but it also gives them the ability to initiate what is called a drive between them and another victim, where one of them turns into a powerful weapon and the other one wields the weapon and gains superhuman abilities. To be able to protect the civilian population from these girls, they are quarantined on artificial islands meant to help train them to control the virus, basically to keep them in check so they're not a threat to society. One of these artificial islands is called Bhikkhuni, where the game takes place. On Bhikkhuni, there is a high reputation of not only being able to control the virus, but its graduates from its school are completely cured of it. A pair of sisters arrives on the island with the hopes that they can be cured and go back to their families, unknowingly going into a plot not only about the virus itself, but around the island's secrets and what that means for them. The story of Valkyrie Drive is actually pretty good. Unlike the Senran Kagura games, it has a very serious tone to it, has a lot of good character development, and plays out much like an anime does. The main problem with the story is that there is a lot of dialogue that has typos in it. Now, you'll see games every once in a while that will have a typo or two when you're going through dialogue cutscenes, but Valkyrie Drive has a lot of typos. You could have a 5-minute cutscene and see a dozen or more typos that really shouldn't be there. It's like they translated the game, but they didn't take the time to proofread it. Since this was made by the same developer as the Senran Kagura Versus games on the PS Vita, Valkyrie Drive is a very similar game. At its core, it is a 3D brawler with RPG elements. You'll be navigating 3D arenas, taking down hordes of enemies, gaining points to power up in transformations, and each stage will end in taking down a boss fight. Now, the first order of business is fan service. After watching the anime, I was expecting this to be a shameless game showing non-stop fondling, kissing, hands being thrust into panties followed by near nude transformation scenes from start to finish, and what I got was something entirely different. There is a decent amount of fan service. Every time you do a transformation or affect a boss with a certain amount of damage, you will see costumes breaking all the way down to the point where they will be nude with lights showing over their private parts. But this is a relatively minor part of the game. Spend 20 minutes in a stage and only about 2 of those minutes will be done with those fan servicey scenes. And if you're wondering, no, you cannot turn this off. Now with main progression, you have a lot of different game modes to go through. You can go through story mode to play through the storyline. Survival mode lets you fight endless hordes of enemies. Challenge mode lets you do specific objective-based missions. Online mode lets you battle with other players over the PlayStation Network. Vault lets you view and listen to unlocked music and artwork. Store lets you purchase new accessories or swimsuits for different characters. Dressing room, much like the dressing room from the Senran Kagura games, lets you use the touchscreen to interact with the characters. And the cafeteria lets the characters interact and deepen their bonds and relationships. Let's talk about going through stages. You always go in as a pair, but you only control one character at a time. One character is the playable character, and one character is the weapon. You run through each 3D area, fighting hordes of enemies, and as you fight, you will slowly build up gauges. But when you're in a stage, you're going to be fighting through hordes of enemies with combo-based combat, and as you fight more enemies, you will build up energy that you can use to either power up your characters, use special attacks, or initiate drive transformations. As you level up each character by doing missions, you can do different types of drive transformations, from first drive all the way up to fourth drive, which is dubbed final drive. This will initiate one of the fan servicey cutscenes, but will also power up your character, giving them more combos to use, increasing their damage, and giving them entirely new attacks. Now overall, the combo system is very similar to that of the Senran Kagura games, but there is one element that is new. The Senran Kagura games like Estival Versus had a dash maneuver that you could use to constantly dash to your opponent and do combos. The Phantom Drive system from Valkyrie Drive is similar, but you have to charge it up, and it is very much based on timing instead of just running up and doing combos over and over and over again. All of this does come together pretty well. Stages are normally set up where you'll have a lot of enemies to use to build up your drive transformations until you get to the boss, so you'll be well prepared. Very few stages have you go against the boss right from the get-go. This does the game credit with preparing you for boss fights, but it also lets us bring in the difficulty. Valkyrie Drive, aside from a few select bosses, isn't a very difficult game. When you're going through the normal difficulty, you can probably button mash your way through almost every single stage, no matter who you're using. It's really just not a very difficult game outside of a few boss fights. So if you're used to this kind of game and you want a challenge, you should probably start from hard mode and go to normal only if certain bosses give you a lot of problems. Now as far as time is concerned, it's a pretty long game. For a 3D brawler, I went through on normal mode and reached the final boss after I'd been playing for over 25 hours. Granted, a lot of this time is dedicated to story scenes because there is a pretty big focus on story in the game, but 25 hours is pretty meaty, especially since it only took me about 12 hours to finish Senran Kagura Estival Versus. Now, as far as the presentation is concerned, visually the game looks great. All of the cell shading is really well done. All of the character models are very smooth. When you're playing this on the PlayStation TV, it looks like you're playing a console game even though you're playing a handheld game. The main problem with the presentation comes with frame drops. Like Senran Kagura Estival Versus, there are some areas where you'll see some frame drops as you're fighting through waves of enemies. This can depend on what area you're in, what kind of weapon you're using, what kind of character you're using, what drive transformation you're in, but there will be times where the frame rate will drop. It won't look nearly as bad on the Vita as it does on the PlayStation TV, and it doesn't really mess up your combo flow, but it's there just so you know. Valkyrie Drive Bhikkhuni is a fun beat-em-up game that is entirely not what I was expecting it to be. Past a typo-filled translation and the occasional frame drop, this game has an engaging story for anime fans and enough combat and fan service to keep fans of both quite busy and satisfied. Reviews to Go rates Valkyrie Drive Bhikkhuni an 8 out of 10. If you'd like to comment on this further, feel free to below or head to my site at www.reviewstogo.com.